The war on Gaza continues, with Israel threatening to go into Rafah regardless of whether or not a ceasefire deal is reached. Meanwhile, the International Court of Justice rejected on Tuesday Nicaragua's request to order Germany to halt military and other aid to Israel and to renew funding to the UN agency in Gaza. The court said the legal conditions for making such an order were not met and ruled against the request in a 15-1 vote, effectively siding with Germany. However, the 16-panel judge did not throw the case out, as Germany had requested. More on that tomorrow. Meanwhile, at the State Department press conference on Tuesday, the State Department's deputy spokesperson, Vedant Patel, faced a barrage of questions, friendly and not so friendly. We bring you excerpts of that now.
I don't have anything off the top, so Daphne, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Prime Minister Netanyahu said today that Israel will carry out an operation against Hamas in Rafah, regardless of whether or not a ceasefire and hostage release deal is reached. Is it still the case that the U.S. hasn't seen a credible plan for entering Rafah, and what will you do if they go ahead as Netanyahu is warning?
That is correct. We continues to be the case that we have not seen a credible plan that would address the varying areas of concerns that you've heard me talk about a number of times from up here and others, primarily the ability to address the serious humanitarian concerns surrounding, again, Rafah is a region with more than 1 million people seeking refuge. It's an area that continues to be an important conduit for humanitarian aid as well as a safe departure for foreign nationals. And so any kind of operation that does not address some of these key concerns would certainly be opposed by us. I'm not going to get into any hypotheticals, but this is something we're continuing to engage with our partners in Israel. Conversations continue to be happening at all levels, and we'll continue to press forward on those conversations and asking for what their plans may or may not be as it pertains to Rafah.
And are you concerned that this warning that they would go ahead with whether or not a ceasefire and hostage deal is reached could derail hostage talks?
I'm not going to speculate on that. What I can say, Daphne, is that we remain committed to reaching a deal for the immediate, for an immediate ceasefire that it secures the release of hostages and allows for additional steps to be taken in terms of surging humanitarian aid, and something that we hope will help bolster the protection of civilians as well.
Follow up on that?
Yeah,
Israel's track record in heeding to the U.S. Statements or calls could be arguably is not great. What gives you confidence, or what makes you think that Israel would in fact listen and hear your calls not to go into Rafah?
I dispute with the premise of that a little bit, Leon. Over the course of this conflict, there have been a number of endeavors in which the United States has pressed for, that we have seen our partners in Israel undertake, dating back to the beginning of this conflict, even in the early days of this conversation that we were having around humanitarian aid. We also continue to see steps being taken as it relates to their cooperation on a number of other lines of efforts in the humanitarian aid space. But both, look, when it comes to humanitarian aid, when it comes to the protection of civilians, and when it comes to a potential operation in Rafah, our answer continues to be we need to see more. We need to see more steps being taken. And as it relates to an operation in Rafah, we have yet to see a credible plan that would address the underlying concerns that I laid out to Daphne. Olivia, go ahead. Yeah.
Just because the secretary was also asked about this not long ago, he said that the U.S. views on this were well known, but he didn't address part of the question that whether Israel had in fact committed to present a military and humanitarian plan. So absent the plans themselves, has there been a formal commitment from the Israeli government to present those plans before launching any ground invasion?
I'm not going to be a spokesperson for the government of Israel. Through the strategic consultative group that you have seen National Security Advisor Sullivan and Secretary Blinken undertake their consultations with counterparts in Israel, discussions at those levels and through other interlocutors as part of those engagements. Those conversations are ongoing. As the Secretary said, the United States position on this could not be clearer. For how long we've been talking about this, we have expressed our serious concern about any kind of operation that does not address some of these key pieces, and will continue to stress and raise these very important issues.
Thank you. I mean, I totally appreciate not asking you for the Israeli perspective on this, only whether the U.S. has actually received a commitment from the government to have formal plans presented prior to any invasion.
I'm just not going to speak to further specificity about this process. Site.
Now, on the statement by the Israeli Prime Minister on Rafah, I mean, he's saying very plainly that whether there is a deal or there is no deal, I'm going to storm Rafah. And you don't have a position on this. I mean, he's not waiting for a deal.
I think our position on Rafah, I really don't appreciate you side twisting my words or the words of the Secretary or other officials up here. We've made our point of view.
The Prime Minister.
I understand your question. And in response to your question and Daphne's question and the number of times that we have been asked about a potential military operation into Rafah from up here, we have been unambiguous about the concerns that we have when it comes to the more than 1 million people seeking refuge in that region, when it comes to this region in particular in Gaza being an important conduit for the delivery of humanitarian aid, it being a region in which foreign nationals, at least at the beginning of this conflict, are able to use consistently for safe departure. So any kind of operation that does not address these concerns would be a non-starter for us. And you've heard me say this, you've heard the Secretary say this, you've heard Matt say this, you've heard Admiral Kirby, Karine, the President. We have been consistent on this.
Yeah, so would it be appropriate for the United States of America to say whether there is a deal or not a deal, we find that the storming of Rafah is unacceptable?
We have been pretty clear about that.
Very clearly.
We have been very clear that any kind of military operation into Rafah that does not address these concerns would be unacceptable to the United States.
Right. Now, I have a question on the humanitarian situation. Officials at the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, leaked a document that says that the Israeli government intently, puts obstacles in the way of these humanitarian aid convoys or whatever getting through to Gaza. Are you aware of that report?
So I'm just not going to comment on leaked documents, Said.
Why won't you comment on this document?
I'm not going to comment on leaked documents, on things that continue to exist under a deliberative process. I will just say that the Secretary and the leaders of this administration, they hear a diverse range of views from across this department, from across the interagency. When it comes to processes that are within the deliberative process, we take those points of view into consideration. But beyond that, I'm just not going to speak to purportedly leaked documents.
Okay. Would you agree that there is almost a common opinion among professionals and experts and so on that Israel is in fact, and the Prime Minister of Israel are in fact, take measures day after day to sort of make these humanitarian aids, including American.
I would disagree with your characterization, Julia.
Thank you. I know the State Department and Secretary Blinken have made clear that the ICC doesn't have jurisdiction, in your view, over the Palestinian conflict. But I wanted to get your response to remarks from Netanyahu just today, especially in context of the conversation we just had about the campus protests. He said, branding Israel's leaders and soldiers as war criminals will pour jet fuel on the fires of anti-Semitism, those fires that are already raging on the campuses of America and across capitals around the world. Do you agree with that assessment that it's anti-Semitic for the ICC to pursue Netanyahu? And what do you make of him connecting this to the protests?
Fundamentally, at the heart of this, Julia, we do not believe that the ICC has jurisdiction over this issue. And that's what the crux here. Beyond that, I'd let the Prime Minister and officials within the Israeli government clarify or offer any commentary on his comments. But at the crux of this for the United States is that we do not believe that the ICC has jurisdiction on this. That being said, we work closely with the ICC in a number of key areas. We think that they do important work as it relates to Ukraine including Darfur, Sudan. But again, on this particular instance, they just do not have jurisdiction.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.